Hi, welcome to this Corbettmaths video. In this video, we're going to look at the video solutions to the recipes practice questions. If you need any extra help on answering questions based on recipes, if you go to Corbettmaths and go to the videos and worksheets section and scroll down to video number 256, there's a dedicated video tutorial on that. Alternatively, scan this QR code. But in this video, we're going to focus on the video solutions to the practice questions, so let's get started. Okay, question number 1. So in these questions, I'm just going to go through how I would answer each of the questions. So I'm not going to talk about it generally in terms of if it was 6 people or 5 people and so on. I'm just going to focus on how I would solve each question. Also, with these questions, sometimes there's more than one approach. I'm going to go through in this video how to use one particular approach, just in terms of the interest of saving time. But I'm going to go through one approach for each question. There may be other alternatives that would be perfectly fine as well. So let's have a look at our first one. Omar is making shortbread for 16 people, and he's found this recipe with a list of ingredients on a website. So we've got shortbread and it serves 8 people. So for 8 people, he needs 150 grams of butter, 75 grams of cast-off sugar, 175 grams of plain flour, and 50 grams of corn flour. And the question says, how much of each ingredient will he need for 16 people? Now, that's quite handy because actually this is for 8 people, and if you double 8, you get 16. So if we just double all these ingredients, how much you need of each of these ingredients, then that'll be our answer. So in terms of 16 people, so for 16 people, we would just multiply all of these by 2. So 150 multiplied by 2 would be 300. 75 doubled would be 150 grams. Plain flour, 175 grams of plain flour doubled would be 350 grams of plain flour, and finally 50 grams of corn flour doubled would be 100 grams of corn flour. So it says how much of each ingredient will he need for 16 people. That'll be 300 grams of butter, 150 grams of caster sugar, 350 grams of plain flour, and 100 grams of corn flour, and that's it. So in this question, we see in the list of ingredients served to 8 people, Omar wanted enough of the ingredients for 16 people, which is double that. We just double the amount needed of each ingredient, and that's it. So let's write those down: 300 grams, 150 grams, 350 grams, and 100 grams, and that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 2. So here we've got scones, and this serves 8 people. And the question says how much of each ingredient would be needed to make scones for 2 people. So if we notice, to get from 8 people to 2 people, we could half it to be 4 people, and half it again to be 2 people. Or just divide it by 4, because if you divide 8 by 4, you get 2. So let's divide all of these quantities by 4, and that'll tell us how much we need for 2 people. So let's write down serves 2, and then we just need to divide by 4. So 60 divided by 4, half it is 30, half again is 15, so that's 15 grams of butter. In terms of flour, half it would be 130, half it again would be 65 grams of flour. Baking powder, 2 teaspoons. Well, we're going to divide that by 4, so half of it would be 1 teaspoon, and half again would be half a teaspoon. And then in terms of the buttermilk, that's 180 grams. We're going to divide that by 4, so that's half it and half it again. Half of it would be 90 millilitres, and half again would be 45 millilitres. And that's it. So for 2 people, we would need 15 grams of butter, 65 grams of flour, half a teaspoon of baking powder, and 45 millilitres of butter. And that's it. So let's write that down. And that's it. So we'd need 15 grams of butter, 65 grams of flour, half a teaspoon of baking powder, and 45 millilitres of milk. And just to recap in this question, because the list we were given served 8 people and we wanted for 2 people, I just divided it by 4. Okay, so question number 3. Question number 3 says, below is a recipe for stuffed turkey. So for stuffed turkey, we would need 500 grams of turkey, 1 red onion, 2 garlic cloves, 150 grams of chestnut mushrooms, 140 grams of spinach, and 300 millilitres of chicken stock. And Mary wants to make stuffed turkey for 10 people. So this is for 4 people, and she wants to make stuffed turkey for 10 people. And the question says how much of each ingredient is needed. Include units. Okay, so in this question, there's a few different approaches that we could use. We could divide all of these quantities by 4, defined for 1 person, and then times them all by 10 to get for 10 people. Another approach would be, and this is the approach that I'm actually going to use, I'm going to double all of these, because if I double all of these, I'll find 8 people. So I'm going to do serves 8, and I'm going to double all of them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to half them all to find serves 2. So serves 2. And then I'm going to add how much we need for 8 people and how much we need for 2 people together to find how much we would need for 10 people. So to find how much we'd need for 8 people, let's double all of these quantities. So 500 grams of turkey, doubled will be 1,000 grams of turkey, 1,000 grams. I could write 1 kilogram there, but I'm going to be adding something, so we're just going to leave it as 1,000 grams for the moment. We're doubling all of these, so 1 red onion, well, for 8 people that'd be 2 red onions. 2 garlic cloves, well, that'll be 4 garlic cloves. 150 grams of chestnut mushrooms, doubling that would be 300 grams of chestnut mushrooms. 140 grams of spinach, well, double that would be 280 grams of spinach. And finally, the chicken stock, 300 milliliters of chicken stock doubled would be 600 milliliters of chicken stock. So that's 8 people. I've just doubled all of those. Remember, we want 10 people. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to half all of these. If I half all of these, that would tell us for 2 people. And then we're going to add them together. So halving all these quantities, 500 grams of turkey, half would be 250 grams of turkey. 1 red onion, half would be half a red onion. 2 garlic cloves, half would be 1 garlic clove. 150 grams of chestnut mushrooms, half would be 75 grams of chestnut mushrooms. 140 grams of spinach, half would be 70 grams of spinach. And 300 milliliters of chicken stock, half would be 100 milliliters of chicken stock. So we now know how much we need for 8 people and how much we need for 2 people. And then if we add them together, that would serve 10. So serves 10. And that would be how much we need. So let's add these together. 1,000 grams plus 250 grams would be 1,250 grams, or we could write 1.25 kilograms. 2 red onions plus half a red onion would be 2.5 red onions. 4 garlic cloves plus 1 garlic clove would be 5 garlic cloves. 300 grams of chestnut mushrooms plus 75 grams of chestnut mushrooms would be 375 grams of chestnut mushrooms. 280 grams of spinach plus 70 grams of spinach would be 350 grams of spinach. And finally, 600 milliliters of chicken stock plus 150 milliliters of chicken stock would be 750 milliliters of chicken stock. And that's it. That's how much we need of each ingredient. So let's write those down. And in terms of turkey, I'm going to write 1.25 kilograms there of turkey. I could write 1,250 grams if I wanted to. The red onions was 2.5 red onions. Garlic cloves, 5. Chestnut mushrooms, 375 grams. And spinach, 350 grams. And chicken stock, finally, is 750 milliliters. 750 milliliters. And that's it. That's how much we need of each of those ingredients. So that's it. So in this question, we were given a list of ingredients that served 4 people. We wanted for 10 people. There's quite a few different approaches we could use for this one. One approach would be to divide all these quantities by 4 to get for 1 person and then times them all by 10. Another approach we could use is actually find out how many serves 2 people by halving them all and then times that by 5, because 2 times 5 is 10, so then that would tell us how much you would need for 10 people. Or the approach that I actually used in this question was I took how much we needed for 4 people, I doubled it to get how much we would need for 8 people, I halved it to find how much we would need for 2 people, and then I added those quantities together, how much we would need for 2 people and 8 people together to get how much we would need for 10 people, and that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 4. So question number 4 says, here's a list of ingredients to make vegetable soup for 6 people. So here's a list of ingredients that we need to make vegetable soup for 6 people. And then we're told that Jessica wants to make enough soup for 9 people. Work out how much of each ingredient she needs. So there's a few different approaches again that we could use for this question. It is a non-calculator question, so that might influence how we approach it. We want to find how much of each ingredient she needs for 9 people. One approach would be to divide all of these by 6. And if we divide all of those by 6, and that'll tell us how much of each ingredient we would need for 1 person, and then we could times that all by 9 to find out how much we need for 9 people. But actually, I don't really want to divide 1.4 litres by 6, and so on. It's going to get a little bit messy. So what I'm going to actually do in this question is, I'm going to take all of those quantities and I'm going to divide them all by 2. And that'll tell us how much we need of each ingredient to serve 3 people. And then for 9 people, well, we're going to divide by 2 to find out how much we need of each ingredient to serve 3 people. So we'd half those to find out how much we need for 3 people. And then once we know for 3 people, to get to 9, we could then multiply by 3. So I'm going to divide all of these by 2 and then times them all by 3 to find out how much we need of each ingredient to serve 9 people. And that's it. As I said, there might be other approaches, but this is the approach that I'm going to use. I'm going to half them all to find for 3 people and then times that all by 3 to get for 9 people. Okay, so half of them all. We need 1.5 onions, so 1.5 onions. I have 300 grams of carrots, half would be 150 grams of carrots. 260 grams of potatoes, divided by 2 would be 130 grams of potatoes. 150 grams of celery divided by 2 would be 75 grams of celery, and 1.4 litres of vegetable stock divided by 2 half would be 0.7 litres of vegetable stock. You could write 700 millilitres if you wanted to, change that to 1,400 millilitres and then divide by 2 to write 700. I'd probably just keep it in litres here, but we're going to times by 3, so it's actually going to get bigger because for 9 people you're going to need more than what you needed for 6 people. Okay, so let's multiply all of these quantities now by 3. So 1.5 onions, well, 1.5 onions, well, that would be 1.5, and 1.5 times 3 would be 4.5, or 4.5 onions, so 4.5. Another approach would be to do 1.5 plus 1.5 plus 1.5, and that's 4.5 onions. So we're going to need 4.5 onions. 150 grams of carrots times by 3 would be 450 grams of carrots. 130 grams of potatoes times by 3 would be 390 grams of potatoes. Okay, now the celery. 75 grams of celery multiplied by 3 would be 225 grams of celery. And just remember, it's a non-calculator question, but you can do your method to the side. So we could do 75 multiplied by 3. 3 times 5 is 15. Put a 5 down, carry a 1. And 3 times 7 is 21 plus 1 is 22. So that's 225 grams of celery. Okay, and then finally vegetable stock. So for 3 people, we needed 0.7 litres. But for 9 people, we're going to need 3 times more. So 0.7 times 3 would be, well, 0.7 plus 0.7 is 1.4. Plus another 0.7 would be 2.1 litres. And that's it. So we need 4.5 onions, we need 450 grams of carrots, we need 390 grams of potatoes, we need 225 grams of celery, and we need 2.1 litres of vegetable stock. And that's it. So this question I approached it by dividing them all by 2 to find out how much we needed for 3 people, and then times that by 3 to see how much we need for 9 people. Another approach could be to divide them all by 6 to find out for 1 person, and then times that all by 9 to find out how much we need for 9 people, and so on. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 5. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 5. So question number 5 said, Richard wants to make shortbread for 3 people, and he has this recipe. So this is a recipe of ingredients. It actually serves shortbread for 4 people. And the question says, how much of each ingredient will Richard need for 3 people? So he's got this list of ingredients. It serves 4 people, but he wants to make shortbread for 3 people. Okay, now there's a few different approaches that he could use in terms of finding out how much shortbread he needs for 3 people. One approach would be to divide each of these by 4 to find for 1 person, and then times by 3 to see how much he needs for 3 people. And that's actually going to be the approach that I'm going to use in this question. Another approach could be to half all of these to find out how much he needs for 2 people, half again to find out how much he needs for 1 person, and then add the quantities he needs for 2 people and 1 person together, and that'll be how much he needs for 3 people. But in this question, I'm going to divide them all by 4, so I'm going to divide by 4 to find out how much he needs for 1 person, and then I'm going to times them all by 3 to see how much he needs for 3 people. So let's do that. So serves 1, serves 1, so let's divide them all by 4 to begin with, so divide by 4. 80 divided by 4 will be 20, so that's 20 grams of butter. 60 grams of caster sugar divided by 4, half and half again will be 15 grams of caster sugar. 100 grams of plain flour divided by 4 will be 25 grams of plain flour. And in terms of the corn flour, 40 grams of corn flour divided by 4 will be 10 grams of corn flour. So we now know how much of each ingredient is needed for 1 person, but we want to serve 3 people, so we now need to times by 3, so times by 3, and that'll be serves 3. So 20 times 3 would be 60 grams of butter. 15 grams of caster sugar times 3 would be 45 grams of caster sugar. 25 grams of plain flour times by 3 would be 75 grams of plain flour. And finally, 10 grams of corn flour times 3 would be 30 grams of corn flour. And that's it. So how much of each ingredient will Richard need for 3 people? That would be 60 grams of butter, 45 grams of caster sugar, 75 grams of plain flour, and 30 grams of corn flour. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, let's have a look at question number 6. So question number 6 says, Donna's using this recipe for chili con carne, and we've got the list of ingredients, and it says serve 6 people, 1 kilogram of mince, 400 grams of tomatoes, 3 chilies, and 600 grams of kidney beans. And Donna's going to use this recipe to make chili con carne for 15 people. Work out how many grams of mince she needs. So we're focused on the mince here. We don't need to look at the other ingredients at this moment. We just need to look at the mince. Now, in terms of that, we could divide it by 6. We could take the 1 kilogram of mince, divide that by 6 to find out how many grams of mince she needs for 1 person, and then times that by 15 to see how many grams of mince you'd need for 15 people. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to half it, because if I divide this by 2, I would find how much serves 3 people, so serves 3. And then once I find out how many serves 3, I can then times that by 5 to find out how much mince would serve 15 people. So let's do that. So let's divide this by 2. So let's divide by 2 first of all. Well, a kilogram is 1,000 grams. If we divide that by 2, that'll be 500 grams of mince. Now that serves 3 people. We want to find 15 people, so we're now going to times by 5. And if we take the 500 grams and multiply by 5, that's equal to 2,500 grams. Now I haven't changed this into 2.5 kilograms because the question actually wants it in grams, so we're going to write 2,500 grams, and that's it. So how much mince would she need to serve 15 people? The answer is 2,500 grams. So we divide it by 2 to find how much you'd need for 3 people, and then times that by 5 to see how much you would need for 15 people. Okay, let's look at the next part, part B. So part B says Shane uses the same recipe. So Shane's using the same recipe, and he uses 1.2 kilograms of tomatoes. how many people is she making chili con carne for? So he uses 1.2 kilograms of tomatoes. So let's go back up here and we're going to rub this out. Normally you'd leave your marking on the test paper. I'm just going to rub this out so we can see it a bit more clearly. So he uses 1.2 kilograms of tomatoes. Now, if we have a look here, for 6 people, he would use 400 grams of tomatoes. So it's not 6 people because he's using 1.2 kilograms. So he's serving more than 6. And actually, let's change it into grams. 1.2 kilograms would be 1,200 grams of tomatoes. So you're using 1,200 grams of tomatoes, 1,200 grams. Now, to get from 400 to 1,200, you'd multiply by 3. He's using 3 times as much tomatoes as he would need to serve 6 people. So that means he's serving 3 times as many people. So if we take our 6 and multiply that by 3, that's going to serve 18. So that serves 18. So that means that he is making chili con carne for 18 people because he's using 3 times as much tomatoes as in the recipe. So that means he's serving 3 times as many people. So he's serving 18. So the answer is, how many people is she making chili con carne for? The answer is 18, unless he's just making really big portions. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 7. So question number 7 says, Thomas has got a recipe for making Rice Krispie cakes, and the recipe uses 120 grams of chocolate and 80 grams of Rice Krispies to make 12 cakes. So this makes 12 cakes, and the question is, how much chocolate should Thomas use to make 30 cakes? So for 12 cakes, so if we write 12 cakes here, 12 cakes, and if we write chocolate and Rice Krispies, so rice. So for 12 cakes, he uses 120 grams of chocolate and he uses 80 grams of Rice Krispies. Now the question is, how much of each ingredient should he use to make 30 cakes? So let's have a look and see how we would get from 12 cakes to 30 cakes. Now, to find out how much he needs for 30 cakes, there's a few different approaches that we could use. One approach is to actually divide these by 2 to find out how much he needs for 6 cakes, and then times that by 5. And that's actually quite straightforward, actually. When I've actually on the website found out how much he needed for 1 cake. So I've divided by 12 to find out how much he needs for 1 cake, and then I've times that by 30 to see how much he needs for 30 cakes. So that's the approach I've used in the answers on the website. So that's the approach I'm going to use here now. Actually, but thinking about it, a better way, I think, would be actually to divide these by 2, half it, to see how much he would need for 6 cakes, and then times that by 5, and that'll be how much he'd need for 30 cakes. That's probably a bit easier in terms of the maths involved. Okay, now the question says how much chocolate. So we're actually focusing just on the chocolate here. So actually, this actually is quite straightforward because this is divisible by 12 quite nicely. Okay, so we're looking for how much chocolate should he use to make 30 cakes. Okay, so if we've got 120 grams, that makes 12 cakes. If we divide that by 12 for 1 cake, that would be 120 divided by 12 is equal to 10 grams. So he needs 10 grams of chocolate for 1 cake. And then if we times that by 30, that'll tell us how much chocolate he needs for 30 cakes. And 10 times 30 is 300. So he would need 300 grams of chocolate. So 300 grams. And that's it. So in this question, it's actually a lot easier than I thought because we were just actually focusing on the chocolate. I should have actually read that a bit more clearly before I started writing out and setting this out. But for the chocolate, he needed 120 grams for 12 cakes. We divided that by 12 to see how much he needed for 1 cake, which is 10 grams. And then we just times that by 30. And the answer is 300 grams. If instead you did use the 6 cake and 30 cake strategy, then you would half this to get 60 grams for 6 cakes, and then times that by 5 would be 300 grams for 30 cakes as well. And that's it. Okay, part B. Part B says, what is 120 grams out of 200 grams expressed as a percentage? So whenever you're doing these recipe questions, be prepared sometimes to perhaps have a question where you're expressing something as a fraction, or as expressing something as a percentage, or even a bit of ratio in there, because sometimes with these recipe questions, they're also linked to other topics as well. So part B says, what is 120 grams out of 200 grams expressed as a percentage? So let's write it as a fraction to begin with. That's 120 out of 200. So that's it as a fraction. So that's it expressed as a fraction, and we want to express it as a percentage. Now remember, percent means out of 100. So ideally what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel this down and simplify it so that I've got 100 on the denominator. So to get from 200 to 100, we divide by 2. So let's divide the numerator by 2 as well. So that'll be 60 out of 100. And 60 out of 100 would be 60%. So 120 out of 200 expressed as a percentage would be 60%. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 8. So question number 8 says, Ella's making chocolate Rice Krispie cakes, so a bit like the last question. And here's a list of ingredients needed to make 8 cakes. So this makes 8 cakes. So for 8 cakes, she needs 150 grams of chocolate, 100 grams of butter, 60 milliliters of golden syrup, and 100 grams of Rice Krispies. But Ella's got 400 grams of chocolate, 175 grams of butter, 100 grams of golden syrup, and 280 grams of Rice Krispies. And the question says, Ella's going to make 36 cakes, so she's wants to make 36 cakes, and then the question says, how much more of each ingredient does Ella need? And that's it. So we need to find out how much more of each ingredient does she need. So this probably isn't enough of 36 cakes, and we need to find out how much more she needs. So this is probably more like a real life question where you're going to make something, you perhaps have some of the ingredients in the cupboard, and you might need to go and buy some more. Unless you're like me and you just go buy the stuff and then realize you had it in the house in the first place. So here we've got a list of ingredients, and this makes 8 cakes, but she's going to make 36 cakes. So let's find out how much of each ingredient she needs for 36 cakes. Now this is a calculator question, so we could do this in different ways. We could divide each of these by 8 to find out how much she needs for 1 cake, and then times it by 36, and that'd be for 36 cakes. That'd be perfect. Another approach would be to actually half all of these to find out how much you would need for 4 cakes, because if you half them all, that'll be 4 cakes, and then times that by 9 to get 36 cakes. That's probably a nice approach if you weren't using a calculator, because they're actually quite nice numbers. If you divide these all by 2 and then times them all by 9, that'll be quite nice for finding 36 cakes. Another approach would be to actually say, well, if she wants to make 36 cakes and this is a recipe for 8 cakes, we could take the 36 and divide it by 8, and that's 4.5. So then that she needs 4.5 times more of each ingredient. So you could times each of these by 4.5. And any of those approach would work. Now, because it's a calculator question, I'm actually just going to divide each of these by 8. So I'm going to find 1 cake. So makes 1. And then we're going to do makes 36. So let's start off with makes 1. So to find makes 1, we're going to divide each of these by 8. So let's divide each of these by 8 in our calculator and see what we get. So that's quite nice. If we take 150 and divide that by 8, that's equal to 18.75 grams. 100 grams of butter, if we divide that by 8, 100 divided by 8 is equal to 12.5 grams of butter. 60 milliliters of golden syrup, if we divide that by 8, that's equal to 7.5 milliliters of golden syrup. And finally, with the Rice Krispies, 100 divided by 8, we've already done that, that's 12.5 grams of Rice Krispies. So that's how much of each ingredient Ella would need for 1 cake, but she wants to make 36 cakes, so we're going to multiply that by 36. So we're going to multiply each of these by 36. Multiply by 36 is equal to 675 grams of chocolate. 12.5 grams of butter multiplied by 36 is equal to 450 grams of butter, and that'll be the same for the Rice Krispies actually. And then for the golden syrup, 7.5 milliliters of golden syrup multiplied by 36 is equal to 270 milliliters of golden syrup. Okay, so we've now worked out how much chocolate, butter, golden syrup and Rice Krispies Ella needs to make the 36 Rice Krispie cakes. So she needs 675 grams of chocolate, 450 grams of butter, 270 milliliters of golden syrup and 450 grams of Rice Krispies. But we were also told how much she had to begin with. So in the cupboard perhaps she's got 400 grams of chocolate, 175 grams of butter, 100 milliliters of golden syrup and 280 grams of Rice Krispies. And the question asks us how much more of each ingredient does she need. So we need to subtract what she has away from what she needs in total to see how much more she needs. So in terms of the chocolate, we would take the 675 grams that she needs and we would take away how much she's got, which is 400 grams, and the difference would be how much more she needs. So she needs another 275 grams of chocolate. In terms of the butter, she needs 450 grams altogether. She's got 175 grams. So if we do 450, take away 175, that'll tell us how much butter she'll need. Let's just do that up here. So 450 subtract 175, and let's see what we get. 0 take away 5, well, let's borrow. So it's now 4 and a 10. 10 take away 5 is 5. 4 take away 7, again, let's borrow. So 14 take away 7 is 7, and 3 take away 1 is 2. So she needs another 275 grams of butter. In terms of the golden syrup, she needs 270 milliliters altogether, but she's got 100 milliliters, so that means she needs another 170 milliliters of golden syrup. And in terms of the Rice Krispies, she needs 450 grams of them altogether. She's already got 280 grams, so if we take that away, that'll be how many more grams of Rice Krispies she needs. So 450 take away 280, let's work that out and see what we get. 0 take away 0 is 0. 5 take away 8, let's borrow, so that's now a 3 and a 15. 15 take away 8 is 7, and 3 take away 2 is equal to 1. So she needs another 170 grams of Rice Krispies. So let's write that down. So she needs another 275 grams of chocolate, another 275 grams of butter, 170 milliliters more golden syrup, and another 170 grams of Rice Krispies. And that's it. Okay, so question number 9 says Joe has a recipe for bolognese sauce. So this is a recipe for bolognese sauce. So she'd need 500 grams of minced beef, 750 grams of chopped tomatoes, 40 grams of mushrooms, and 150 milliliters of chicken stock. And then we're told she only has 400 grams of minced beef. So she hasn't got 500 grams, she's only got 400 grams. And then the question says, how much of each ingredient should she use? So in this question, we're actually trying to find out if she was to scale this recipe and use 400 grams of minced beef, how much chopped tomatoes, how many grams of mushrooms, and how many milliliters of chicken stock would she need? So what I'm going to do in this question is she wants to use 400 grams of minced beef, 400 grams of minced beef. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide each of these by 5, because that'll tell us if we had 100 grams of minced beef, that'll tell us how much of the other ingredients she would need. So we're going to divide by 5 first of all. So divide by 5, and that'll tell us if she has 100 grams of minced beef, how much of the other ingredients she'd need. And then I'm going to multiply that by 4, and that then tell us if she has 400 grams of minced beef, which she does, how much of each of the other ingredients she would need. So let's divide each of them by 5 to begin with. So 750 divided by 5 is equal to 150 grams of tomatoes. 40 divided by 5 is 8 grams of mushrooms, and 150 divided by 5 would be 30 milliliters of chicken stock. So if she had 100 grams of minced beef, she'd need 150 grams of chopped tomatoes, 8 grams of mushrooms, and 30 milliliters of chicken stock. But here we know that she actually has 400 grams of minced beef, so I'm now going to multiply each of these quantities by 4 to see how much of the other ingredients she'd need if she had 400 grams of minced beef. So 100 grams times 4 is 400 grams, fantastic. 150 times 4 is 600 grams of chopped tomatoes. In terms of the mushrooms, 8 grams times 4 would be 32 grams of mushrooms, and our 30 milliliters of chicken stock times 4 would be 120 milliliters of chicken stock. And that's it. That's how much of the other ingredients you would need. Now in this question, the approach that I used was actually to find out if she had 100 grams of minced beef and then to multiply by 4 to get 400 grams of minced beef. Another approach that we could have used is actually here, we've got this is 500 grams. So if she was to do the recipe, she would use 500 grams of minced beef, but she's only got 400. So we could write that as a fraction and say 400 out of the 500. And if you cancel that down, that's equal to 4/5. So you just need to work out 4/5 of the other ingredients, and that'll tell you how much of the other ingredients you would need. But we've actually worked out 4/5 by dividing by 5 and times it by 4 anyway, so that's it. Okay, so how many grams of chopped tomatoes? That was 600. In terms of the mushrooms, that was 32. And in terms of the chicken stock, that was 120 milliliters. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, so question number 10. Question number 10 says Nancy is making cupcakes, and we're told mix 15, and we've got 120 grams of flour, 135 grams of caster sugar, 300 grams of icing sugar, 3 eggs, and 260 grams of butter. And Nancy has got 300 grams of flour, 450 grams of caster sugar, 800 grams of icing sugar, 12 eggs, and 760 grams of butter. And the question says, work out the greatest number of cupcakes that Nancy could make. Okay, so let's start off by looking at the flour. So to make 15, Nancy would need 120 grams of flour. But if we look at what she's actually got 3 times as much flour. So she could actually make, if she had enough of the other ingredients, she could make 45 cupcakes because she's got 3 times as much flour. So what I'm going to do is I found that by taking the 360 grams that she has, and I divided that by how much she would need, and that was equal to 3. So she's got 3 times as much flour as you would need. And I'm going to now do this with all the other ingredients as well, because then what we can do is we can see how many times more caster sugar does she have, and icing sugar, and eggs and butter, and then we can look for the lowest one, because the lowest one's going to be the one that limits it in terms of how many she can make. So let's do that. So she's got 450 grams of caster sugar. If we divide that by 135 grams of caster sugar, that would be equal to, so 3.333 and so on. So she's got 3 1/3 times as much caster sugar. So at the minute, the flour is the thing that's limiting her because she's only got 3 times as much of that. In terms of the icing sugar, 850, that's how much she's got. And if we divide that by 300, because that's how much she needs for 15, and 850 divided by 300 is equal to 2.8333 and so on. So the minute the icing sugar is the thing that's limiting her, because she's only got 2.8333 and so on times as much icing sugar than she needs for the recipe. So that means that that's the thing limiting her at the minute. Now let's look at the eggs. She's got 12 eggs. If we divide that by 3, that's equal to 4. So she's got 4 times as many eggs. That's fine. And in terms of the butter, 760 divided by 260 is equal to 2.92307 and so on. So at the minute you can see that the thing that's limiting her is the icing sugar, because she's only got 2.8333 and so on times as much icing sugar as she needs for the recipe. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of the flour, she had enough flour to make 3 times as many. So we would take the 15 and times it by 3, so she'd be able to make 45 cupcakes if she had enough of the other ingredients. So here what we're going to do is we're going to take the 15 cupcakes, so that's how much she can make with that recipe, and we're going to multiply by the 2.8333 and so on, because that's as many more times icing sugar as she's got than she needs for this recipe. And if we do 15 multiplied by 2.8333 and so on, we get that's equal to 42.5 cupcakes. So that means she's got enough caster sugar to make 42.5 cupcakes. Now actually she's not going to make 42.5 cupcakes, well she might, but the question says what's the greatest number of cupcakes that she can make. That's complete cupcakes, so that would be 42. She can make 42 cupcakes. So just to recap in this question, I divided how much of each ingredient she had by how much she needed for the recipe, and then I focused on the one that was limited to her, the one that was the least times as much. So here the icing sugar was limited her. The butter came shortly after, but the icing sugar was the main thing that was limiting her in terms of how many times she could do this recipe. So, and it was 2.8333 and so on times the amount of icing sugar she needed for this recipe. So because this recipe made 15, if we times the 15 by that 2.8333 and so on, so that means she had enough icing sugar to make 42.5 or 42.5 cupcakes. But the question says what's the greatest number of cupcakes she can make? So that's complete cupcakes, that would be 42, and that's it. So we've answered question number 10. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 11. Okay, let's have a look at question number 11. So question number 11 says, Harry is making donuts to sell for a charity fundraiser. And here's the list of ingredients he needs to make 12 donuts. So he needs 300 grams of flour, 45 grams of caster sugar, 2 eggs, and 60 grams of butter. And then we're told he's got 290 grams of caster sugar and plenty of the other ingredients. So he must have loads of eggs, loads of butter, and loads of flour. And Harry makes as many as possible and sells all the donuts for £1.80 each. How much money does Harry raise for charity? Okay, so in this question, we want to work out how much money he raises for charity, but to do that, what we need to do is we need to work out how many donuts he sells. So let's work out how many donuts he can make. And in this question, the main thing that's limiting how many donuts he can make is the caster sugar. Now we're told that 12 donuts, it takes 45 grams of caster sugar to make 12 donuts. So if we take the 45 grams and we divide that by 12, that'll be how many grams of caster sugar are in one donut. So 45 divided by 12 is equal to 3.75 grams. So there's 3.75 grams of caster sugar in each one of these donuts that Harry is making. Now he's got 290 grams of caster sugar. So if we take the 290 grams and we divide it by 3.75, how many grams of caster sugar in one donut, that'll tell us how many donuts he can make. So 290 divided by 3.75 is equal to 77.333 and so on. So that means he can make 77 donuts. He can make 77 donuts. And each donut he sells for £1.80. So if we do 77 multiplied by £1.80 or £1.80 multiplied by 77, that'll tell us how much money he raises for charity. So 77 multiplied by £1.80 is equal to £138.60, and that's it. So that's how much money Harry raises for charity, and that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, so question number 12. Question number 12 says the table shows information about the protein content of yogurt bars. So these particular yogurt bars, and in terms of the yogurt bar, we're told that in terms of the protein, in 100 grams of the yogurt bar, there would be 5.75 grams of protein, and in each bar, there's actually 2.3 grams of protein. And then we're told the yogurt bars are sold in 520 gram packs. So there's these packs of yogurt bars, and they're sold in 520 gram packs. And part A says work out how many bars are in each pack. So we need to work out how many yogurt bars are in these 520 gram packs. Okay, so we're told for 100 grams of the yogurt bar, there's 5.75 grams of protein, but in each bar there's 2.3 grams of protein. So if we divide 5.75 by 2.3, that'll tell us how many bars, or that'll tell us how many yogurt bars there are in 100 grams. And that'll be quite useful, and then we can work out the mass of one of these yogurt bars. So if we take the 5.75 and we divide it by 2.3, that's equal to 5 over 2, or 2.5. So there's 2.5 yogurt bars in every 100 grams, because if you eat 2.5 of the yogurt bars, that'll be 5.75 grams of protein, or 100 grams. So if we take the 100 grams and we divide that by 2.5, because there's 2.5 bars in 100 grams, that'll tell us how heavy, or tell us the mass of one of the bars. So 100 divided by 2.5 is equal to 40. So that means that each bar weighs 40 grams. This is fantastic because we know how heavy each bar is, and we know that the yogurt bars are sold in 520 gram packs. If we take the 520 and we divide that by 40, that'll tell us how many yogurt bars there are in this 520 gram pack. So 520 divided by 40 is equal to 13. So that means there's 13 bars in that pack, and that's it. Okay, and then if we carry on the question, we're then told that snack size yogurt bars are made using the same recipe. So there's these snack size yogurt bars, and the snack size yogurt bars are sold in 140 gram packs, and there's 5 bars in each of those packs. And then we've been asked to complete this table for the protein. And again, we know that for 100 grams of the yogurt bars, there's 5.75 grams of protein because it's made using the same recipe. And we've been asked to complete it, so we need to work out how many grams of protein are in one of the snack bars. So let's do that. Okay, so to begin with, we know that the snack size yogurt bars are sold in 140 gram packs, and there's 5 bars. So if we take 140 and we divide that by 5, that'll tell us the mass of one of these bars. So 140 divided by 5 is equal to 28. So 28 grams. That's the mass of one of those bars. Now we need to work out how much protein is in that bar. Now here, actually, I've noticed here with the protein that we've got per 100 grams, we've got 5.75 grams. So that's 5.75 out of 100, or 5.75%. So 5.75% of this bar is protein. So 5.75% is protein. Okay, so we now know that 5.75% of the bar is protein. We just need to work out what 5.75% of 28 grams is, and then that'll be how many grams of protein are in that bar. So let's work out 5.75% of the mass of the bar. So 28 divided by 100 divided by 1% would be equal to 0.28 grams. And then if we take our 0.28 and multiply that by 5.75, that'll be how many grams of protein are in the bar. So 5.75 multiplied by 0.28 is equal to 1.61 grams of protein. So there's 1.61 grams of protein in each bar, and that's it. And that's one way we could approach that question, by changing this 5.75 grams into a percentage, and it's 5.75%, and work out 5.75% of the mass of the bar. Well, another way to do that question is, well, once we work out the mass of each bar is 28 grams, is then to think, well, if it's 5.75 for 100 grams, we could divide this amount by 100 to find out how many grams of protein are in 1 gram of the bar, and then times by 28, and again you get 1.61, and that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 13. So question number 13 says, Adil is making concrete using cement, sand and gravel in the ratio 1 to 2 to 3. So he's using 1 part cement, 2 parts sand and 3 parts gravel. And he's got 43 kilograms of cement, 83 kilograms of sand and 151 kilograms of gravel. And the question is, what is the maximum amount of concrete that Adil can make? Okay, so to this question, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the ratio, and I'm going to consider the cement, the sand and the gravel. Now, there may be more than one approach to this question, but this is the approach that I'm going to use. Okay, so the ratio is 1 to 2 to 3. Okay, so let's start by looking at the cement. And if we're using the ratio 1 to 2 to 3, that means if we have 43 kilograms of cement, so if we have with the cement, if we've got 43 kilograms of cement, then we would need to have twice as much sand. So if we double 43, that'd be 86 kilograms of sand. And in terms of the gravel, we'd need 3 times as much gravel, and 43 times 3 is equal to 129. So if we use 43 kilograms of cement, all the cement, we would need 86 kilograms of sand, which we don't have, and we'd need 129 kilograms of gravel. So that wouldn't be a problem, but the sand is a problem. So this wouldn't be possible. Okay, so now let's consider the sand. So if we used all the sand, that would be 83 kilograms of sand. In terms of cement, that would be half as much, because obviously if it's 2 parts sand and 1 part cement, that would be half as much. And 83 divided by 2 is 41.5. So that'd be 41.5 kilograms of cement. And in terms of the gravel, well, if 1 part is 41.5, if we do 41.5 multiplied by 3, that's equal to 124.5 kilograms. So if we have a look at our quantities, we've got enough cement, because we need 41.5 kilograms and we've got 43. We've used all the sand and we've got enough gravel. So that one would work. Let's have a look and see if we use all the gravel instead. So if we used all the gravel, that means so if we used all the gravel, then that would be 151 kilograms of gravel. That's 3 parts. Let's divide that by 3 to find out 1 part for the cement. So 151 divided by 3 is equal to 50.3 recurring, so 50.333 and so on. And if you times that by 2 to get two parts, that'd be equal to 100.666 and so on. Now if we have a look at this, we actually don't have enough cement, and we also don't have enough sand either, but we have enough gravel. Okay, so we've had a look at this and we've seen that it's not possible to use all the cement, because if we used all the cement we'd have to have 86 kilograms of sand, which we don't. We've had a look to see can we use all of the gravel, and we can't because we wouldn't have enough cement or sand for that. And then we've looked to see can we use all the sand, and in terms of that we would be, because if we used all the sand that's 83 kilograms, and that would only need 41.5 kilograms of cement, and it would only need 124.5 kilograms of gravel. So the question said what's the maximum amount of concrete that a dill can make, so we just add these together. So if we do 41.5 plus 83 plus 124.5, that's equal to 249 kilograms. So that means he's got enough to make 249 kilograms. And that's it. And that's it. So in this video, I've looked at the video solutions to the recipes practice questions. If you need any extra help on recipes, go to the videos and worksheets section on the website and scroll down to video number 256. Alternatively, you can scan this QR code. But in this video, we're focused on the video solutions to the practice questions. I really hope you found it useful. And if you have found it useful, please like it and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.